Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive, where we like to say we go deep on fascinating topics.
We really do.
And today we're diving into something that's, well, let's be honest, kind of universally experienced, but always feels intensely personal.
Yeah.
Breakups. We're going to unpack the science behind those, turbulent emotions we all go through.
Right.
Share some practical strategies for healing, and hopefully help you come out of this experience, stronger and wiser on the other side.
Yeah, it's interesting because breakups are so common.
They are.
Almost everyone goes through at least one major one in their lifetime.
At least one.
But it still feels like every single time it's like uncharted territory.
It does.
And it makes sense because our brains actually process romantic love and heartbreak really similarly to like physical pain.
Oh, wow.
It's not just drama, it's like biology.
Okay, so let's get real for a second.
Okay.
What is actually happening in our brains when we're going through heartbreak? Are we all just walking cliches with literally broken hearts?
Well, not literally broken, thankfully.
Okay, good.
But all those feelings you're having, the sadness, the anger, even panic sometimes.
Yeah.
Those are all triggered by these shifts in your hormones and your brain chemicals.
Really?
Yeah. So for example, when a relationship ends, your brain's reward system, which is all about, those feel-good dopamine hits we get from being with someone we love.
Yes.
That system goes through a bit of withdrawal.
What?
Yeah, it can actually look like craving an addiction.
So that feeling of wanting to check their Instagram every 5 minutes,
Exactly.
even though you know you shouldn't.
Yes.
That's our brain literally going through withdrawal.
It is. Your brain is craving that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And it makes it so hard to break away.
Wow.
That's why I think it's so important to understand the science of it, because it helps us normalize the experience.
Right.
Like, okay, this is rough.
Yeah.
But this is a normal reaction. This doesn't mean I'm broken.
Right. It's not you. It's your brain.
Exactly.
Right, chemicals.
Yeah.
So speaking of navigating those choppy emotional waters, the research that you shared with me is packed with self-care techniques.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
Sometimes the thought of self-care when you're going through a breakup feels about as appealing as running a marathon.
Oh, I completely
But
get it.
who has the energy for that?
It's almost like your emotional bandwidth is completely maxed out.
Yes.
But here's the thing. Self-care after a breakup isn't, about bubble baths and face masks.
Okay.
It's about giving yourself the same compassion and care you give to a dear friend going through the same thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to reframe it.
Mhm.
Instead of self-indulgence, it's self-preservation,
Exactly.
which we all need.
Yes. And honestly, one of the most powerful things you can do is tap into your support system.
Yeah.
The research has shown time and time again that talking about your feelings, whether it's to a trusted friend, a family member, a therapist,
Yeah.
that's essential for processing emotional pain.
So social connection is key.
It is.
But what if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't want to talk to anyone?
Yeah.
What are some other ways to kind of process these emotions in a healthy way?
Well, that's where expressive writing can be really helpful,
Okay.
specifically journaling. And there's really fascinating research on this.
Right.
One study I read found that people who wrote about their breakup for just 15 minutes a day
Okay.
for 3 days in a row,
Okay.
they experienced significant improvements in their emotional and physical well-being compared to those who didn't.
Wow. So it wasn't like they were writing for hours.
No.
It was just a small amount.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
That's it.
But how does that help, though, just writing it down?
So it's almost like you're giving your feelings this designated space to exist outside of yourself.
Okay.
It's like creating order out of chaos.
Right.
And plus, the act of writing itself
Yeah.
can be really therapeutic. It allows us to process our thoughts and emotions at our own pace.
That's so interesting how these small actions can have a big impact.
They really can.
Yeah.
Especially during tough times like this.
Totally.
It's not about instant fixes. It's about taking small, intentional steps towards healing.
Mm-hmm.
And those steps often look different for everyone.
So we've talked about the importance of support and processing all these emotions.
Yeah.
But what about those moments when you're just hit with memories and triggers?
Mhm.
It's like they're everywhere, even when they're not physically around.
Oh, you're hitting on such a crucial point there.
Yeah.
Especially in, our digitally connected world.
Right.
We underestimate how much our environment, both physical and digital, impact our emotional state.
Okay.
And it's not even just about avoiding the restaurant where you had your first date.
You mean our phones count as an environment?
They totally do.
Really?
Think about it. Our phones are practically an extension of ourselves at this point.
Okay, sure.
They hold all our memories, our conversations, our connections.
It's true.
And so when we're constantly bombarded by reminders of the relationship on social media,
Yeah,
it's like reopening the wound every time we scroll,
that's a really good point.
right?
It's like trying to heal a broken leg while constantly bumping into things.
Exactly.
So what do we do?
So that's why I think creating healthy boundaries with your phone is absolutely essential
Okay.
after a breakup.
Does that mean I have to, like, throw my phone away?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a Luddite.
Okay.
It's about taking back control of your digital space.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, it depends on the person.
Okay.
For some people, a complete social media detox can be helpful,
Okay.
especially like in those early stages of a breakup,
Yeah.
just to give yourself that space to heal without the constant triggers.
Yeah, just to, like, breathe.
Exactly.
Mm.
And you know what? Even small changes can make a difference.
Okay, like what?
Unfollowing or muting your ex is always a great first step.
Easy enough.
You could also curate your feed to minimize your exposure to potentially triggering content.
Okay.
Like, you don't need to see endless engagement announcements or, romantic getaways.
Okay. I like how you frame it as curating your feed.
Yeah,
It's like we have the power to make that space more positive
exactly.
and more supportive for ourselves.
It's about being mindful of the information that we're consuming and how it makes us feel.
Okay, that's a good point.
And remember those feel-good chemicals that our brain is craving.
Yeah.
We can actually find those from other sources besides our exes.
Okay, I'm really curious about this. So we're not just trying to avoid negativity, we're actively trying to bring in positivity.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So think about, what are those activities that light you up inside?
Okay.
Spending time in nature, listening to uplifting music, connecting with loved ones, pursuing a hobby you're passionate about.
Mm.
All of these things release dopamine and other mood-boosting chemicals
Okay.
that can really help counteract those withdrawal-like symptoms.
So it's not just about distraction, it's replacing with intention.
Yes.
Those negative feelings with things that feel good.
I love that it's like you're rewiring your brain for happiness post-breakup.
Exactly. I love it. But you mentioned something earlier that I kind of want to go back to.
Okay.
You mentioned reframing.
Yes.
How do we actually go about changing those negative thought patterns that can happen after a breakup?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get stuck in the what ifs and the should haves.
It's completely natural for those thoughts to surface.
Okay.
Our brains are hardwired to seek patterns and explanations.
Yeah,
Especially in the face of something as like emotionally charged as a breakup.
totally.
But those stories that we tell ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
which are often fueled by, self-blame or regret,
Yeah.
those can keep us trapped in a cycle of negativity.
So how do we break free? Do we just tell ourselves to think positive? Because that never seems to work.
You're so right. It's not as simple as just, slapping on a happy face.
Right.
It's about digging a little deeper.
Okay.
One technique I find really helpful is called thought challenging.
Thought challenging. I like that. What is that?
So it's basically like putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Okay.
So let's say the thought is, it's all my fault. The relationship ended. I'm unlovable.
Okay. Very common thought.
Right. So first ask yourself, is that thought actually true?
Okay.
Is there any evidence to support it?
That's a good point.
Right.
Because sometimes there isn't.
Often when we actually examine those negative thoughts, we realize they're based way more on emotion than fact.
Totally.
Right. And if the thought isn't rooted in reality, you can start to gently challenge it.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what's a more balanced or realistic way to look at the situation?
So instead of it's all my fault, maybe it's we both played a role in this and ultimately we just weren't a good fit.
Exactly.
Which is okay.
Which is okay. And it's about finding that narrative that acknowledges the complexity of the situation without placing all the blame on yourself.
Yes, and sometimes I imagine it's even helpful to almost reframe the whole breakup.
Absolutely.
It's like a learning experience.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on what you've lost, ask yourself, what have I learned from this? How can I grow from this? How can I use this to make better choices moving forward?
Exactly. And you know what? It's amazing
Yeah.
how simply shifting our perspective can transform something that feels so heavy and defeating
Yeah.
into a catalyst for positive change.
And speaking of positive change, I think it would be great to move into talking about moving on.
Right.
What are some practical steps that we can take to rebuild our lives after going through this?
Well, it's important to remember that moving on isn't about erasing the past
Okay.
or pretending it didn't happen.
Okay.
It's about integrating that experience into who we are and using it as fuel for personal growth.
Okay. I like that.
And one powerful way to do that is by setting new goals.
Goal setting.
Yeah.
How does that help? after a breakup?
So when we're in a relationship, our goals and aspirations often become really intertwined with our partners.
That's true.
And after a breakup, there's this beautiful opportunity to reconnect with our own individual dreams and desires.
It's like rediscovering who you are outside of the we and stepping back into the power of me.
Exactly. It's about saying, okay, what do I want for my life? What brings me joy? What have I always wanted to do but haven't yet?
So these goals could be related to anything, really.
Absolutely.
Career, travel, personal growth, hobbies.
Anything. It's about identifying what truly matters to you
Okay.
and taking steps to make those things a reality. And sometimes it's even about exploring new avenues and stepping outside our comfort zones a little bit.
You mentioned earlier the importance of expanding our world after a breakup.
Yes.
What did you mean by that? You mentioned earlier the importance of expanding our world after a breakup.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, it's kind of like realizing that breakups, as painful as they are, can also be these catalysts for incredible personal growth.
Okay.
Because we often, we build our lives around our relationships.
Yeah.
And then when that relationship ends, it creates all this space for new possibilities, new connections, new experiences.
So it's not just about finding a new person, it's about finding new parts of ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. Like it's about saying yes to opportunities that maybe we would have overlooked before
Okay.
or put on hold. It can be anything from joining like a hiking group
Right.
to signing up for that pottery class you've always wanted to try,
Right.
or even just like striking up conversations with people you wouldn't normally talk to.
It's like the universe is kind of pushing us to try new things and see what happens.
A little bit.
And you never know, those new experiences could lead to really great things
Okay,
that you wouldn't have expected.
Things you wouldn't have found otherwise.
Which reminds me of something else you mentioned, gratitude.
Yes.
How can having gratitude help us get through a breakup?
So when we're hurting, it's easy to get stuck on what we've lost, right?
Yeah.
The companionship, the routines, the future we thought we had.
Yeah.
Gratitude actually helps us shift that focus from what's missing to what's still here.
Okay, so instead of focusing on the empty space on the couch next to me, I should focus on the sunshine outside. Or the smell of my coffee.
Exactly. Or, like your dog that's cuddling up with you.
Yes.
It's about training our brains to actually look for the good, even when we're feeling pain.
Okay.
And, there's research that shows that practicing gratitude can make a big difference on how we feel.
Really?
People who make it a habit to think about what they're grateful for, they say they're happier, they're more optimistic, they're more resilient.
So it actually changes how we react to things.
It can.
So how do we do that? How do we incorporate gratitude more?
So one thing you can do is keep a gratitude journal.
Okay.
And every day you just take a few minutes to write down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for.
Okay.
And it can be anything, no matter how small.
Like my coffee.
Exactly. Or, a good conversation, or a pretty sunset,
Okay.
or even just the fact that, we're breathing.
It's like making a collection of little joys
Yeah,
to look back on when you need them.
exactly. And over time, that habit of, looking for and focusing on the positive can actually change our brains
Wow.
to be more optimistic and resilient.
So we really can train our brains to
They can.
think differently.
Yeah, our brains are really adaptable.
That's amazing.
And we have more power than we think to shape our thoughts, our feelings, and our experiences.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm realizing that a lot of what we talked about today comes back to self-compassion.
Yeah,
Like, it's not about rushing through the pain. It's about letting yourself feel it and learn from it so you can come out stronger on the other side.
beautifully said. And remember, healing isn't linear.
That's true.
There are going to be good days and bad days.
Yeah.
You have moments of sadness and anger and even regret.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all part of the process.
That's all part of it.
Yeah.
Well, as we navigate that journey, let's all remember to take care of ourselves, connect with people who love us,
Yes.
reframe those negative thoughts, and practice gratitude. It'll help us heal, grow, and learn to love ourselves even more than we thought possible.
And as you start this next chapter, I want you to think about something.
Okay.
What if this breakup, as awful as it feels right now, is really just redirecting you
Okay.
to a future filled with more love, more joy, more fulfillment than you could have ever imagined?
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This was great, and thank you all for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.